Welcome to the recording for the course overview unit for week 1. And you can see that when I click on week 1, as I've explained in the getting started recording, week 1 I have half of the work assigned for Tuesday and the other half of the work assigned for Thursday. The Tuesday work was mostly the getting started activities, introducing yourself, your learning plan. Then the Thursday activities is the course overview unit, an introduction to course content. So you'll see in this unit, you're going to watch the recording, which you're doing now. Then you'll complete and submit the Class Connect write-up. And of course, as you watch the recording, then you end up studying this stuff. You're going to skip the discussion for this unit, and then you have a quiz at the end, the unit quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the course overview unit. And as I go through the course overview unit, as I hope you know, for the Class Connect write-up questions, I'll be answering those as we go along through the unit. So I'm going to close that and go right into the course overview unit. Now the first thing I want to do for you is I want to model what you would do to do the write-ups. So here I'm in the course overview unit, and the first thing I would do if I were a student, I would go to the unit Class Connect write-up. So here we are in the Class Connect write-up, and as you can see, you watch the recording, then you complete this in the Dropbox. Include the questions, the question numbers, as well as your answers. So the steps here: copy and paste these items into word processor document, find the answers from this recording, write your answers directly below each item, check your spelling and all that. Then you copy and paste your work, the questions and the answers, into the Dropbox, not an attached file. So if I were a student, what I would do is I would highlight all of this, then I would right click, copy, then I'd paste it into a word processor. Then now that I have all those questions with the numbers and everything pasted in the word processor, then as I go through this recording, I would see the answers. Then I can pause the recording and go write the answers in the word processor, then go back to the recording, wait until the next answer comes up, pause it, then go type it in the word processor, etc. Then when all that's finished, I go to my word processor, check my grammar, check my spelling, highlight all the questions and answers, and then post it in the Dropbox, in the appropriate Dropbox. So that's how the process works for you as a student. Hey, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the course overview unit. And in my mind, I want to think of these questions. What software will we use, and why do you not download it until later in the course? And what is the term in gaming for different types of games? So we want to keep those in mind as we start this unit. So here we are, jumping into game design. And just start talking about, imagine your life without fun and entertainment. Your life would be pretty boring, right? So these days we have games, and it used to be when I was a kid, or your age, teenager, the games we would do, we'd be outside playing games and playing basketball and different things like that. And of course, the games that we played back then too, though, we played pinball games, and you've seen pinball machines. Some of you probably have, where you put your money in, and then you have the balls that come down, the metal balls, and you pull the plunger back and it launches the ball. So those were our version of entertaining games that we would go do, and there were places that you could play those, just like you have now, where you can go and play video games and different things like that. So that was our version of gaming. But now we've moved into video games. And you see that the way that video games enable artists or people who are video game designers to create these interactive games that people really enjoy. And games they attract people of all ages. Now the software we'll be using for this is called Multimedia Fusion, and we won't use it until we get into Unit 5. So you're not going to download it yet, and the reason is it's only a 30-day demo. So don't download it too soon. I'll tell you when you need to download it. A little bit more of the course description. So it talks about gaming, and we're going to learn a little bit about the history of gaming. And you'll start exploring the different types of games, and the different types of games are called genres. And some of you might know that different types of books are called genres, or different types of writing are called genres, or different types of movies are genres. So anything that's artistic and it's a different type, it's called a genre. So there's your answer to that. Computer requirements, don't really have to worry about this. If you have a modern computer, you're going to be fine. For this whole course, when you finish it, you'll be able to explain the different types of games, use analytical thinking, talking about game elements, develop gameplay innovation principles, express ideas in writing, integrate storytelling into gameplay, explore the requirements for appealing games, explore sound in games, interpret data from original game design documents, and finally build a working prototype of a game in multimedia fusion. Now, as I said in the introduction to this course and the getting started, you're not going to be developing a giant game that you would ultimately like to make if you're really into gaming. But the first 3 or 4 weeks of the class, you're going to be doing the planning for a game that you might want to create someday. So that can be out of the box. It could be as great a game as you want. So you'll design characters for it, backgrounds, all kinds of things with that. But then later on, when we get into multimedia fusion, in that you'll be creating just a basic game with features and different things like that. So it's not a major game that you're going to be creating. So please keep that in mind. You have to go to college for a couple years to become a game designer. At least a couple years, then have lots of experience to develop the video games that people use today. In this unit, in the overview unit, we're going to look at the history of gaming and the different types of games. Now, in the graded assignments, you can't always go by these. You need to go by the grade book because we're not doing the discussion. The player elements discussion, I've put that into the Class Connect write-up. So always go to the grade book to see what assignments you're doing. Then there is a unit quiz, and you'll see over here on the left I have the unit quiz preview. I always post those in all the units. Make sure you use the unit quiz preview to prepare for the unit quiz, because as I said before, I do not allow people to redo the quizzes. So let's go back to the Class Connect write-up, and we went ahead and found the answers for both of these, didn't we? Okay, now we're going to go into section A. What was the name of the first video game? When was it developed? List of many ways games are played these days. Next generation of gaming is virtual reality. Explain what that is. So let's jump into section A. So as we look at section A, we're going to look at the history of games. And the reason the history of games is important is for game designers, they have to look at the mistakes that were made in the past so they don't repeat those mistakes. Even repeating minor mistakes, as it says here, can be a major issue in games because gaming is so competitive these days in the marketplace with all the companies, all the platforms. If a company makes one mistake and spends millions and millions of dollars to create one type of game and then it ends up being a dud, that company could possibly go out of business. So it's really important that game designers know what people enjoy and how the history of games has affected what people do these days with gaming. So in this section, look at the development of games, look at some popular games from the 90s, and identify future developments in game design. So moving along, the birth of games. Now you can go through this tutorial, you can listen to it, and it talks about gaming, or you can look at a copy of the script. Now there are 2 Class Connect write-up questions are related to this. So if you look at this, this talks about Pong being the first generation video game, but that's the first game that people could purchase. But really the first game was a game called Space War back in the 1960s, created by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And you can see it wasn't successful because the hardware was way too expensive. So that was the first game. Now you can read down through this to learn the history of gaming, and I'm not going to show you the exact answer. So you can either read down through this, or you can listen to this presentation if you hit begin right here, and you will find as you go through that, as I told you this answer already, but I'm going to have you explore that presentation, that information, to find out the many ways that games are played these days. There's a specific paragraph or section that talks about and lists the number of ways that games are played these days. I'm going to have you do that one on your own. So getting back to this, section A, sorry. So getting back to this, so we looked at the birth of games, and now we're going to look at the history of games. So in the 60s, gaming technology started, and there were, excuse me, then games really, the revolution of games was in the 90s. Although I started with games back in the late 70s with the old Atari system. A friend of mine had that, and we used to play games all the time, and we played Pong and tennis type games, Space Commander and different things like that. But you can see that in the 90s, many different kinds of games came up, so you can read about all these. Wolfenstein was an interesting game. It was one of the first 3D games that came out. Gave the illusion of being a 3D game. Grand Theft Auto, some of you have played. Doom, obviously some of you have played. So you can see the different types of gaming. And then Quake was the first-person shooter game that really became popular. And it was also the first multiplayer game that could be played over the internet. So you can see that in the 90s was really the birth of new types of gaming. Now, virtual reality, that's going to be the next game type of environment. In virtual reality, the player interacts with the computer simulated environment. So in virtual reality, ultimately, obviously you wouldn't have all of this types of stuff. In virtual reality, you'll probably just have glasses that are Bluetooth connected to your gaming system, and then you'll be able to use those glasses and play the game. I could also see that you might have glasses that instead of your game being on a system or on a screen, your game might be like a hologram. So you could have glasses and you could play that game through the hologram. That could be on the wall in your room or a part of your room or something. So lots of things that are going to be happening with virtual reality. But anyway, virtual reality is where the player interacts with the environment. So in conclusion, as we go through the next couple of sessions, keep in mind some of the history of gaming, and then you'll see why things have changed into what they are these days. In section B, I have a couple of questions from section B. What is the impact of gameplay as you move up different levels in a specific game? What are the main player elements in gaming? And think about your favorite video game in terms of the player elements we've learned in this unit. What about that game makes it interesting, fun, and keeps your attention? So the impact of gameplay as you move up levels and the main player elements. So in section B, you can see that it's all about player elements. And player elements are the direct impacts on what a player does in a game, how they interact with the game. So in this game, we're going to look at what makes a good game in terms of player elements and define different player elements. Okay, the first part of player elements are challenges and goals. So that's one thing that affects how a player plays a game. So the gaming designers need to think about challenges and goals of the game as they start to develop their games. So you can read through here and learn about challenges and games. And of course, challenges and goals, I mean. And without goals, there would be no interest in the game at all. Because that's the goal might be to, like in Mario Kart or games like that, the goal would be to finish the race as the leader, right? In Donkey Kong, the goal, whatever the goal might be in that for different levels. In the shoot 'em up type games, the goal is to shoot your enemies. So those are the goals that you have. And the goals relate to difficulty levels. And the thing about difficulty levels is that as you move up a level, like right here, with each step in a level, the task or goal becomes more challenging, which sustains the interest of the players. So that's the answer to that Class Connect write-up question. As you move up a level in games, the task becomes more of a challenge, and the player has more interest or keeps their interest. So I don't want you to just copy and paste these answers. I'd like you to put the answers in your own words. But that's essentially the answer right here, so go ahead and put it in your own words. Now the challenge games, they're different. That's one type of games, but challenge games has particular goals where you're not shooting somebody or anything like that. But it might be a puzzle to solve or something like that. So there are different types of games that present different types of challenges. But the first part of player elements are the challenges and goals of the game. That's one of the first player elements. Directions, that's another player element. And the directions, how do the controls work? How do you get to a certain place? Those types of things. The directions determine how the player is going to decide how they play. So of course the controls and the effects of the controls, where the player needs to go in a game or what the player needs to collect, and the main aim of the game, those are directions. And the reason these player elements are important to keep in mind is when you start to plan your own game, you're going to have to come up with a set of player elements for your game. So you can see in this game how all the directions, this fight simulator, all the directions are there for you. Another player element is the control, meaning the strategy, how a person controls the game. So this isn't it's part of the physical control. It is part of that too. As we go back, we have the directions, how you play the game, then how you control the game. The physical part of it. So the controls, it could be like a joystick or a keyboard. It could be just moving your body in a virtual reality game. Ultimately, you just move your body or even just move your eyes and things would happen in the game. So controls are an important part of it. And I'm not sure why they have the word strategies right here. Obviously strategy is a part of a game, but controls are a physical component of the game, where strategy is a mental part of the game. So the controls that you use are important. And you see down here, in some computer features, the player has control over the game. They can use high resolution, low resolution, change the sounds, things like that. Drama and interactivity, those are more player elements. So, the drama, what happens in the game. And in most games, the drama is the twists and the turns in a game story. What happens to the protagonist. And the protagonist, that's the main character. So in most games, you are the protagonist, aren't you? You're the main character. So that's what it means by the drama in a game, what the protagonist goes through. And obviously interactivity. The greater the interactivity, the more interesting the game may be. And interactivity would be not only interactivity within the game, but also interactivity between different people playing. Like playing over the internet or over your smartphone. You're interacting with another person. So interactivity is important. So all those things that we just looked at, challenges and goals, directions, controls, drama and interactivity, those are all what are called player elements. Now here's a discussion. We're not going to have this discussion. We're not doing discussions in this class, so you'll just skip through those. Let's go back to the write-up. And in the write-up here, let's see, in section B, the impact of the player as they move up levels in games, I talked about that. The main player elements in gaming, I talked about those things. Those were all covered in section B. And then finally, think about your favorite video game in terms of player elements. What about the game makes it interesting and keeps your attention? So as you Answer question 8. Think about those player elements and mention a couple of those player elements when you answer number 8. And finally, in section C, so you're going to list 5 game genre, which is your favorite, explain why. And then in number 10, you'll refer back to question 8, and you'll say what genre is your favorite game that you listed in section 8. Let's go to section C now, or listed in question C. Now, or question 8, sorry. So now in section C, we're talking about genres or types of games. So as you see here, genre means a style or a variety of something. So again, genre of music, genre of literature, genre of games. And there are many types of games, and games are categorized not only by the types of games they are, but also by the way that they are played. And they have similarities and differences, obviously, but there are many categories. But here are some of the main genre: sports, action, fighting, first person, third person, real-time strategy, simulation, etc. So in this section, we're going to define the mini game genre and perspectives in which they are played. So first one is sports games. So like soccer games, baseball, Madden, football, etc. So you can read about sports games. And the thing about sports games is a lot of people are already interested in sports, so it's natural that they might play sports video games. One of the downsides to sports games is they are mirrored by the sports. Like Madden comes out every year, Madden 2012, Madden 2013, the football games. So some of the things are old school, but nowadays you get real-time statistics for games, don't you? Like NBA 2012 or 2013 or whatever that is. My son plays that, and he can have real live game statistics of players. So we're kind of getting past this downside to sports games. And of course, the first sports game was Pong, which was like a tennis game. Action games, driving cars, doing things like that. So go ahead and read about the action games right here, and they take lots of hand-eye coordination. Some people consider them the most addictive type of game, but I would say probably that first-person shooter games are most addicting. Fighting games, a lot of you have played those. Here's a picture of an older fighting game. First-person game, that's where a person is you're actually the eyes of the person on the screen, so you're from the on-screen player's point of view in a first-person game. Third-person game, so you're watching somebody do something. So you're played from another point of view, so you're overlooking the character in the storyline. Puzzle games, Tetris, those types of games. Some of you are familiar with those. And a lot of puzzle games are coming out on the handhelds, aren't they? On some of the game apps. Role-playing games. Some of you really enjoy those. It's kind of a reality-based world, whether it's a real world or a futuristic or a past world. Real-time strategy games. Those would be like war games are an interesting one there. They can be human or they can be a fantasy type game, but army type games are that way. Finally, simulation games. This is what my favorite is. I really used to like playing the old SimCity games back in the late 90s when I was teaching computer classes in a school. Students loved playing SimCity, where they would simulate a city. And now, of course, through Facebook has lots of games that people can play with each other. And those are generally simulation or real life type games. Here's a little genre activity. Let's go through this and figure out what types of games these are. And last, we're wrapping up this section. Last, you have the quiz. So on this quiz, again, you have the quiz preview over here I provide to you. And look at the quiz preview and find the answers in the quiz preview before you do the quiz. Because I do not allow you to retake quizzes. Okay, let's go back to the Class Connect write-up and make sure we answer those last couple of questions. 5 game genre, well, we looked at about 9 or 10 of them. So you're going to list 5 of them. Which is your favorite? Explain why. Then in question 10, you're going to look back at question 8 where you talked about your favorite game and determine what genre your favorite game is categorized. So that's all. So this is about 25 minutes. Went through the course overview, and now you have all of the answers to all these Class Connect write-up questions. So I look forward to your work coming in. Please make sure you turn it in properly, that it's just text into the Dropbox, not an attached file. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll look forward to your work coming in. Bye.